Senator Durbin.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Powell, 35 years ago, I introduced an amendment in the House to ban smoking on airplanes. It passed by a partisan vote, and it started an effort to stop big tobacco from selling its dangerous product to our children and a lot of others in America. It resulted in attorneys general from across many states joining together in lawsuits to hold the tobacco industry accountable for their lies, where they refused to acknowledge the deadly addiction that tobacco caused. It took years and years and years for those lawsuits to move to a point where finally tobacco was brought to its knees. And above all, they stopped their merchandising to children in our country. I think that made America better. At the time, about 25% of school children were smoking, 25%, and today it's less than 5%. There's still problems with vaping and the like, but I think that settlement made a difference. And I wondered if there was anyone across America who would stand up and speak out against that settlement. Turns out it was you. You were quoted as saying, "It's not politically correct to criticize the tobacco settlement, but I am not willing to junk 500 years of common law in exchange for a pot of gold." Can you explain that?
Yes, Senator. My main complaint with the settlement was particularly the attorney fee provisions. There were provisions in the settlement agreement which provided for huge monetary payments to the Attorney General's local counsel, and it far exceeded what would have been reasonable for attorneys to receive in terms of pay. I think it was $27 million that the lawyers and local counsel received, and literally the only thing they did was to file the complaint. That was my principal complaint with the settlement, Senator.
The quote I've been given does not include any reference to lawyers' fees. It's opposition to the settlement. Did you have any opposition to the settlement per se?
Not principally. My principal complaint, Senator, was opposition to the attorney fee provision.
Let me ask the other two individuals before us today. Thank you for being here. You both have a connection to the August 2023 law enforcement raid on the Marion County Record, a newspaper in Kansas in a very small town. The incident received national coverage and outrage over a violation of freedom of the press. Mr. Mattivi, as Kansas Bureau of Investigations Director, you initially supported the raid, stating days afterwards that your agency needed to be able to investigate, quote, credible allegations, and, quote, no one is above the law, whether a public official or representative of the media. After widespread criticism of the raid, KBI took over the investigation and announced 5 days after the raid that all of the seized materials would be returned to the newspaper. So I'd like to ask you several questions that the two of you should address if they apply. Did the KBI have any role in the raid on the Marion County Record? And based on this incident, has KBI made any changes in how it approaches investigations involving the press? If you're confirmed to the bench, what factors will you consider if you're asked to sign off on a warrant authorizing the search of a press outlet? I didn't include one important fact. There was a judgment on behalf of the Marion County Record of $3 million for this raid. Mr. Mattivi, would you like to start?
Yes, Senator Durbin, thank you. The media reports at the outset of this event talked about the KBI being involved in the raid, and in fact even represented the KBI led the raid. Ultimate facts determined that that was not the case at all. There was no KBI agent present on the raid. I have to be careful about talking about the raid itself because there is still litigation pending. What I would point out to you, Ranking Member, and to everyone else is that of all of the litigation that took place in that case, the KBI was not a party to any of it. And I think that demonstrates conclusively what the KBI's involvement in the raid was. With regard to the First Amendment and the protections afforded under it, I believe they are a foundational underpinning of our society. I believe that the press is absolutely protected under the First Amendment. At the same time, I believe that the press is not above the law, nor is any individual. I don't believe those are mutually exclusive. I believe they both can be true. I believe they both are true.
Mr.
And that
Kuhl?
would be my stance on the bench.
Thank you. Mr. Kuhlman, would you respond?
Yes, Senator. So in the Marion County cases, I was retained after the raids happened to represent the Marion County Sheriff's Office and the Marion County officials that were defendants or potential defendants. My clients were the ones who entered into that consent judgment that you referenced that resulted in the payment of $3 million. My understanding is that there were several different plaintiffs who were affected and have filed suit against the city that was also involved in that event. That litigation is still pending. So like Director Mativi, I hesitate to comment too much on the pending litigation, but if fortunate enough to be confirmed, I believe the First Amendment is a foundational principle of our Constitution. I'm a strong believer in it, and I will apply the binding precedent regarding the First Amendment fairly and faithfully.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.